Good morning, CLC.
Good morning.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for coming in love. Thank you, Brian, and everybody, for the beautiful music. We really appreciate that. We are here to serve you. So thank you for that. And I ask you to join me now in saying, Divine love through me blesses and multiplies all the good I am and have, all the good I give and receive. I am prosperous now, and so it is. And now, in this moment, I invite you to relax. Take this opportunity to take a few deep cleansing breaths. Center your body. Center your mind. Allow yourself to let go of anything that you have going on in the past, happening in the future. Because right now, we have this moment. So I invite you to be here now. Universal love enfolds me. Universal wisdom inspires me. Universal spirit enlightens me. Universal power encircles me. I am one, and all is well. As we begin this inner healing process, let me invite you to relax in quiet confidence, opening yourself to the miracle-working higher power. Now symbolize the unity of your thinking and feeling nature by touching your chest with your right hand, and let my words act as your own for your own inner healing, acceptance, and receptivity. I acknowledge that there is a power, intelligence, and wisdom greater than my own. I am in the midst of it, and it is in the midst of me, sensitive and responsive to my every thought, word, action, and feeling. I now make this true for myself by stating aloud, I acknowledge. Acknowledging the higher power working through my life, I admit that I am personally responsible for solving my own problems, while being guided and assisted by something greater than myself. As I am ready to surrender the conflicts of my ego to the wisdom of the infinite presence, I simply speak these words: I surrender. Knowing that forgiveness is the key to unconditional love and the feeling of heaven, I now unconditionally forgive anyone and everyone who has ever injured me in any way, real or imagined. And I now forgive myself for all of my mistaken judgments and their resulting actions. From my deepest level of understanding, I now say, I forgive.
I forgive.
Realizing that I continually experience the effects of my own thinking, I now choose to allow this higher power to recreate me deeply, filling my mind with thoughts that are only positive, constructive, loving, and beautiful. I call upon this divine inflow by stating aloud, I choose.
I choose.
I now center upon that one special idea that I'm willing to accept as real for me in this coming week. In visualizing the idea as already acted upon and brought to pass, in seeing my idea become a fact of my experience, I enjoy the happiness and peace of my thought fulfilled and gratefully speak these words. I accept.
I accept.
Knowing that I have an everlasting place in the midst of the power that sustains all creation, as well as the support of all those around me, I allow myself to relax in the peace of fulfillment and gratitude and say, I release.
I release.
Now, in my mind's eye, I envision the presence of someone near and dear to me. This can be a friend, a family member, a teacher or a mentor, someone who has touched my life in deep and loving ways. Someone who may not be physically present in the room with me this morning. I turn toward that image in my mind's eye and say, I am grateful for the good in your life.
I'm grateful for the good in your life.
Now I open my eyes, turn to the world around me, and joyfully speak to anyone who may be physically present in the room or virtually on this broadcast, and share in confidence in saying, I am grateful for the good in your life.
I'm grateful for the good in your life.
I thank you all as often as I can on Sundays on camera. And I realize there are a lot of people I've been leaving out who've been working behind the scenes for this center for this whole time we've been in these struggling times. And one of those people is the Reverend David Dewhurst, because you heard Danielle mention that Lisa Ryan does a reading every morning on Facebook Live. David does one every afternoon on Facebook Live. She mentioned that too, but I want you to realize they do this every day and have been doing it for over a year. Every single day, 7 days a week, they have been doing this. I don't know if this continues for the rest of your lives, but...
Got another year from me.
Yeah, all right. Well, we thank you. We thank you so much for your service to our people who are enjoying this and checking in and learning and reading along with you in the magazine and in the 365 Days of Richer Living book that you're working out of. So I'm here to bring the energy level down quite a bit. No. I will try not to. But I mentioned the moon 2 weeks ago. I mentioned it again last week. I hadn't really planned to. It's just kind of how things shook out. And I mentioned it in regard to, can I move this? I'm looking right at it instead of you. All right, awesome. The Ever Given, the container ship that was stuck in the Suez Canal, was freed by a number of different technologies and interventions, but among them the moon, because of the full moon and the high tide that it amplified. So I brought that up as a metaphor, talked about the ever given, how life is ever given, good is ever given. Sometimes it gets stuck on the way to us and it needs a little boost, you know. And then last week, being Easter and the final day of Passover, and also around the celebration of Holi, and I mentioned Ramadan coming up. These are all festivals and times of spiritual deepening that are related to the moon. The date moves around wildly because of the full moon. Today I want to talk a little bit about the new moon and the moon generally as a metaphor for spiritual practice. What if I told you the moon is made of green cheese? Have you ever heard that? Were you told that as a little kid, the moon is made of green cheese, and you went out there and you looked up at it, and when I was, I guess 15, people went there, but before that it was like completely unknown as far as a tactile relationship with it. Since then, it's, well, you know, we know what it is. But what if I told you? I mean, I have some credibility here, you know. I'm like a spiritual teacher. I'm something of an authority figure. So what if I told you that the moon is made of green cheese? And you decided to believe that because I told you that. I'd make two of us. And then we'd find a third and a fourth and some more people. People just looking for something to believe in. You might as well believe in something. So we'll say the moon's made of green cheese. And we got together. Pretty soon there'd be a whole bunch of us, and we could actually start a religion or a philosophy based on the moon being made of green cheese. The idea of the moon being made of green cheese, or alternately cream cheese, dates from, that's better, dates from the 1660s, when it was invented not as a statement of fact or even a theory, but as an example of something really dumb. Okay? It was, as an extreme example of something really ridiculous. The moon being made of green cheese. But if I believe it, and you believed it with me, and we got some more people together, could we, in fact, transform the moon in the form that it's in as a piece of space rock? Could we transform it into green cheese? And this is where metaphysics comes in. And I know you're on the edge of your chair waiting for the answer here. And the answer is a clear and distinct and absolute yes and no. We would change our experience of it. And our experience of the thing is interchangeable with the thing. We would change our experience of the thing. And we would go out and we would look at the moon at night, and we would see a large, smelly dairy product hanging in the sky, rather than the thing that poets have written about, and singers have sung about, artists have painted about, and so on throughout the ages, okay? And we would be disappointed, and we would be saddened, and it would be kind of yuck. In the same way that if we went out and looked at the full moon, and we saw an advertising logo projected onto it, which is actually an idea that's been floated here lately, to the dismay of all of us. Well, we would have the experience of the thing as a disappointment. We would have the experience of the thing as kind of gross, really, failing to understand that we had made up that experience ourselves, that we'd agreed to it, that we'd agreed to minimize something. We'd agreed to mitigate something, to mitigate. There are a couple of words I want to throw out here today because they have interesting definitions. One of them is mitigated and unmitigated. To mitigate something means to make it less. Like you mitigate trouble or you mitigate pain or something, you relieve it by making it less. So we would mitigate our experience of life. As we do, whenever we agree that something is less than it could be. This is the power of mind. And the moon, in esoteric lore, typically represents the subconscious mind, and the sun represents the conscious mind. And how they represent this on other planets and other worlds, if they have a metaphysical philosophy, I do not know, but it works quite well on ours. That the sun projects light and the moon reflects light. The sun is the spirit. The moon is the soul. And it's from the soul the creation occurs. The sun by itself could not manage without the moon to mitigate in a way, but to reflect and to transmit. And in terms of the subconscious aspect of us, that's where the creativity happens. Choice is made. We make a big deal about choice. We make a big deal about our freedom to choose, and that at the conscious level we can determine a thing, and we can, thou shalt decree a thing, and it shall be established unto thee, and the light shall shine upon all thy ways. That light is moonlight. That light is moonlight. We decree a thing, and it goes into the subconscious, the subjective realm. And it's there that it meets eternity, and it meets infinity, and it meets all the possibilities of things that could occur. And they begin to manifest in some form around us. But what our job is to manage our experience of these things so that we enjoy them. So that I'm sitting there thinking as I'm getting ready to give this talk, and Danielle is up here taking us through a piece that's known as the Inner Healing Experience that we read and have for years, read every Sunday together. the inner healing experience. And at the end of each stanza of that, you know, we make a declaration about I release, I give thanks. There's a lot of giving thanks at the end of it. You know, I'm grateful for the good in your life. We're grateful for the good in the lives of the people who are not with us. We're grateful for the good in the lives of the people who are with us. We're making these declarations. Gratitude is a choice. Why should we be grateful? You might sit there listening to her reading this saying, I don't want to do any of this stuff. You can't make me. You can't make me. Why do we read it to you? It's good for you. It's good for you. Gratitude is good for you. Release is good for you. Thanksgiving, forgiveness, all of these different stands that we take in consciousness, they're good for us. How do we know this? It's how they make us feel. But it's a choice. It's always a choice. So I could sit there with my arms crossed. I'm not going to do it now because I'll knock my microphone off, but I could sit there with my arms crossed, you know, and just say, life is miserable and life is this. And 30 years ago, somebody did something to me and I can't forgive them and I can't get past it, and therefore I'm going to interpret all incoming experience in that light. And that's the light I choose. That's the dimension of light that I choose in the moment to cast on my own experience and on my own future. We dim the light. We brighten the light. That's why they call it enlightenment, illumination, you know, all these metaphors that surround the idea of light, how much light is cast on a thing, is moderated by me. We come in on Sunday mornings, and the first thing I do, I'm kind of obsessive about this. I go and tweak the lights, move the lights around. Ask Brian, do you have enough light? And we dim the lights, and we do. Because, I don't know, just it makes it a little more intimate if it doesn't look like a warehouse in here, you know. Take the light down a little bit. We're all doing this in our lives, managing the light in some way. Tonight is the new moon. Tonight there is no moon for all intents and purposes. Of course there is, but we don't experience it in this part of the world. So, it's a time of darkness, it's a time of deepening, and it's a time when in esoteric work you make your choices. You do your seed planting in consciousness. Everybody gets all jacked up about the full moon. The full moon is beautiful, hangs there in the sky. Sometimes it's right on the horizon, big and orange, seen through the atmosphere, you know. But to enjoy what happens at the full moon, to manifest fully at the full moon, we have to do our new moon work. We go into the darkness where there is no result yet, in order to craft a result, an outcome, a set of outcomes in consciousness. And the word for that, remember I told you that they made up the idea of the moon being made of green cheese as an example of something ridiculous. Well, there's a word that is used today, not by many people much of the time, as you'll hear, but there's a word that's used, and it's typically thought to mean the same thing as ridiculous, and the word is preposterous. Isn't that an old-fashioned word? Preposterous, you can hear someone say in a Bernard Shaw play or something. Preposterous means to start with the end in mind, which by some is considered ridiculous. Preposterous, pre-posterity, pre-posterior. See, in other words, you switch the rail cars, right? You start with the end in mind. You start with the outcome in mind. And the result appears to be preposterous because you can't show your work. I was taught in school to show my work, weren't you? In math class, show your work. Otherwise, they think you've gone to the back of the book for the answer. But that which is born in darkness, you can't show the work. It occurs in the realm of the great mystery. I don't know where my good is coming from. It's coming from wherever it is now, said one spiritual teacher. I don't know where my good is. It's a mystery. It's in darkness. It's shrouded in darkness. It's the new moon thing. But I start with the end in mind of how would I have it be if it could be any way at all? How would I have it be? How would I have my life be if it could be any way at all? How would I have my loved ones' lives be if they could be any way? How would I have the world's life be if it could be any way at all? Understanding that when it comes to anybody but me, I'm talking about my experience. In fact, when it comes to me, I'm talking about my experience. But absolutely, when it comes to other people and the world as a whole, it's about my experience of it. Because I might look at the world and say, well, everybody's fine and everybody's having a wonderful day today, and they're not. But maybe my experience of them is. And this is where metaphysics gets very nuanced. Because in no way do we deny the suffering of others. What we don't do is hover over the suffering as though it were the end result that is the best that can be hoped for on this mortal coil. There is something greater. There is something greater. There is a place where nothing has ever been wrong. We go to the place where nothing has ever been wrong to bring back the feeling of there never having been anything wrong, to introduce that then into our conversation and into our relationships. And suddenly there's nothing wrong between you and me. And then there's nothing wrong between you and me and them. And then pretty soon there's nothing wrong, and you see how this works? And if there appears to be something wrong, we clean it up in the moment. We clean it up. We make amends. And we change behavior and we go forward. And suddenly life is a lot easier. And suddenly it looks like we're surrounded by angels and not just people with phobias and neuroses and unhealed issues and so on. We see ourselves in a whole new light. That's how metaphysics works. It looks like magic, but there's a principle to it. It's just that, as with every principle, there's a period of time when the thing goes out of sight. It goes into the tunnel, so to speak. Okay? Goes underground, comes back above ground. We don't know how it's going to work. We don't know exactly. Even down to the real practical, nitty-gritty kinds of things. How are you going to get that new job? Where are you going to find the house you want to live in next? Where are you going to meet the person of your dreams? How exactly is all of this going to come about? People want to take New Thought teachers up by the lapels sometimes and say, prove it. Show me. Show me exactly how this is going to unfold. We don't know any better than anybody else. But there is something that does know. And we go to that, you see. And it introduces you to your highest good. That's an expression we use a lot, your highest good. Now, make no mistake, your highest good today might not be your highest good tomorrow. Highest goods tend to pass us on to later highest goods and so forth. Life will not have us stand still for very long. So if you get the great new job, for example, what it's doing is preparing you. It may prepare you, as it hasn't seemingly in my case, prepare me to do the same thing for years, you know. But I'm doing it differently all the time. And it might be preparing you for a new career that opens into a new career that moves you to over here and over there and around the world, and you had no idea that this was coming. And this is certainly true in terms of relationships with people. Every person that you meet changes you. Every person that you meet is changed by you. That's how consciousness transmits itself. And I promise you that you can think back to people in your life who've had a really positive influence on you, just as you can think back to ones who've had a really negative influence. And the question is, where do you carry the influence? And how do you carry it? And do you carry it? And do you carry it? Or do you at some point put it down? Do you at some point just set it down and say, this is today. This is today. This is a new moment for me. This is a new birth for me, such as we talked about last week with Easter. So, the title of this talk, which I've kind of skirted around, is Life is, as I do, life is a mirror and a window. Both things are true simultaneously. How can this be? Well, we're dealing with a metaphysical reality. A physical reality would have the thing be one thing or another, unless I suppose it's a two-way mirror like you see on TV shows. But life is a mirror in the sense that it reflects back to us that which we believe ourselves to be. But it doesn't stop there. If it stopped there, we'd be living in the past. All we would see would be the reflection of what was. I believed this. I, in a way, chose this. Now here it is. Great. Well, I can see that it's here, And now I see the pattern of choice in the mirror, but all of this has already happened. All of this is a statistic of a prior occurrence. Life is more than a mirror. It's a window. And it being a window is really the more exciting part to it. You know, when's the last time you got really excited by the idea of taking full responsibility for every choice in your life? That's not exciting, is it? That sounds like discipline. That sounds like hard work. That sounds like pain. But the idea that you can be whatever you choose, that's excited our species since the start. And somebody has watched somebody else do something and has said to themselves, if I could do anything at all, it would be something like that, only better. Only better. Wow, they're great. I can be as great, and I can exceed where they've gone. It's not a competitive thing as much as I can bring something new here that has never been experienced before. You've had teachers like that. You've had inspirations like that. That you can be more. That's the window that we look through. And it's not even just about human achievement. It's not even just about setting the bar higher, you know. You look through that window, it's a window into heaven. It's a window into limitless possibility. See, I can't prove to you that you can have the house of your dreams or the car of your dreams or the job of your dreams or the spouse or mate or significant other of your dreams. I can't prove this to you. I can't, you know, but I can point you in direction where you can look, where you will require no proof. And that is the one, the I am. To look into the heart of the I am, which is unmitigated. And I am starting to use in my head and heart and on paper, I'm starting to use the expression unmitigated in place of unconditional. And I realize there's a little bit of semantic hair splitting going on here, but spirit is sometimes conditioned because my experience conditions it in my life. God is all there is, but if I think there's a place where God's not showing up, then that gets to be my experience, and therefore I've de facto conditioned the one. Have I really? No, but you get the point. But unmitigated means not lessened, not made less. So I can condition the one to my heart's content and never lessen it, never diminish it. Ernest Holmes talks about this in the Declaration of Principles. The one infinite and inexhaustible source that is not absorbed. We believe that the manifest universe is the body of God, and that God is not absorbed in its creation. So there's not a finiteness to it, where it's spread so thin in certain places that there's kind of a patch of not there, you know? Because we're dealing with an infinite something, I can condition it all I want. I can decide that today's a miserable day, when in fact it's absolutely gorgeous. And this requires a dedication of attitude. It requires preparation. Last week we talked about the resurrection of Jesus. Not talked about so often because we don't know. It's his new moon experience. His 18 years. 18 years. What was he doing for 18 years? I believe, without any proof, but it's Sunday morning and all kinds of people are saying all kinds of stuff without any proof, right? I believe he was learning to do this. He was learning to do this. Not only to teach it to 12 others, but to be the hinge on which the door of history swings. I don't think he was working on his short game. I think he was preparing himself. He was preparing himself the whole time for this. It was his new moon experience, so that he could, in an unmitigated kind of way, tell it like it is. Know ye not that ye are gods. Know ye not. These things that I do, you shall do also, and greater things than these, and so on. And those are just the words that we have record of out of the 3 years of his ministry. He was doing this way. Is it going to take you 18 years? Is it going to take my 18 years? Me 18 years? Well, you know, it's like you say, well, that's too long. But every minute you wait, it's just putting it off. It's like the person who said, well, you know, how long is it going to take me to learn to play the piano? They asked the teacher, and they said, well, typically, what is it, the 10,000 hour, 15,000 hour rule, something like that, you know. 10,000 hour rule, yeah. So, you know, given this and this and this, probably 7 years. It's going to take you 7 years to master the piano. If you play the piano, if you practice all these hours and stuff. They said, 7 years, I'm going to be 70 years old. So, well, if you don't practice the piano in 7 years, you're still going to be 70 years old. You know, why not begin? Why not begin? And we see this modeled in nature. And last week, Reverend Lisa took a number of photos in the yard, in the gardens here, and she has for the last few weeks, and spring has sprung, you know, all of these beautiful flowers. Sean took one this week, sent to me, of a daylily. You see the daylilies? I think they're daylilies, the red daylilies out there that have just, okay, today's the 11th of April. The 14th of February was a Sunday. We were here. We fled out of this place to beat the snow, to beat the cold. This really affected a number of you guys who were watching here in this area. You remember how cold it got here? The coldest it had been in 30 years, and you came out 3 or 4 days later and everything was frozen solid. And I mean, it was dead. It was dead. The vegetation was rotting. Stuff was just fried to a crisp from the cold. And now look. And Lisa discovered last week the ferns, the delicate little ferns are coming back. Not just the azaleas, because azaleas always cop an attitude, but the ferns are coming back. The daylilies are up. Nature is fierce. So are you. So are you. You are fierce within yourself to know the truth of your own being. And that's the key to everything. Sometimes people in New Thought, they say, well, all of that philosophical stuff is great. Teach me how to manifest. I want to manifest, okay? Manifestation is awesome, but it's an effect. It's an effect. We start with cause. We start with cause. There is one life. That life is God, or whatever name you want to give it. That life is all the life there is. That life is your life, my life, all life right now. Pulsing through everything. Sentient beings, inanimate objects. This microphone stand is that life. Having an experience of itself as a microphone stand, apparently unconsciously, but who am I to know? Because there's an awful lot I don't know. And it may have wise and deep thoughts, this microphone stand. Now that's a little silly, but you know who believed that? Our ancestors. And so if they wanted to work with this microphone stand, they would approach it with what? Respect. With respect. You approach the musical instrument with respect. You approach the sentient being with respect. What happens when you do that? You introduce into your own subconscious mind the belief in a respectful universe, and what you give out, you get back. What you give out, you get back. Okay? If we had to boil this whole thing and all of its books and all of its teachings down to just a nub, it would be what you give out, you get back. Simple as that. But there is more. There is more. Because you may not know you have it in you to give out more, to be more than you seem. And so we look to the source through the great big wide floor-to-ceiling picture window that takes us into the experience of pure, unmitigated heaven, of the oneness of all life, that I can be anything. And actually, in a paradoxical kind of way, because I can be anything, I don't have to be everything. I can be content within myself for who I am. I can trust the process of apparent physical mortality. I can trust that when spring turns to summer and summer turns to fall and things start to drop off trees and the earth in this part of the world or wherever you are, fall happens to kind of decline a little, I can trust that something is waiting to be born. I can trust that. And I don't have to have it all here in front of me, and I don't have to show my work, and I don't have to prove it. Deep down in you, deep down in all of us, there is a knowing of this oneness. Oh, we bat it away. We read the newspaper to it, and we argue with it, and we fuss with it and all, but deep down inside, there is the knowing of this oneness, which is what draws us to Jesus and to the Buddha and to all the great spiritual teachers of the ages. It's because on some level they knew this. And on some level they shared this and shared it fiercely, shared it unmitigatedly, shared it for our benefit today. So, the whole month of talks, which is now 2 more weeks, is about spiritual practice. Big surprise. So will all future talks from this stage now and forever be in some way or another, some aspect of it, some angle of it, some facet that gleams in the light, about spiritual practice. Spiritual practice begins right where you are today, and if you don't do it, in some years you'll still be 70. Time will still pass, and it'll tick by, but why not? Why not just do this? You want to. You want to. It's not one of these prayers, oh God, I've got to say my prayers again and bless everybody. No, this is the kind of thing you can't wait to do. Why? Because it's describing exactly what we all want. And then we fan out from there into all of our individual preferences. So this process that we use here, one of many, but really the keystone of our spiritual processes, is called spiritual mind treatment. And it goes like this. There is one life, one power, one presence, one magical, even miraculous reality that I perceive in this springtime day, in the singing of the birds, in the growing of the flowers, the blowing of the breeze, the soft white clouds as they scud across the sky. It's one life. Exuberantly expressing itself. I choose to catch that vision. I choose to share in that exuberance, ride the crest of that wave, if you will. I choose optimism. I can believe anything at all, but I choose to believe right now that things are heading in the right direction for peace and harmony and prosperity and well-being among all beings. I choose to prepare myself for this by acting as though it were already so, and acknowledging within myself any parts that are not ready yet to accept this, any residual pain, any attachment to outcomes that were less than satisfactory. I invite my feelings to speak. I don't just honor them. I hear them. I interview them to tell me their stories and what it will take for them to release themselves into my care and through me into Spirit's care, so that I can hand them up and in their place have joy. As I speak this word about myself, I'm speaking about all beings everywhere, to accept as each will, by their own lights. And especially I speak it for those who feel lost or confused or deeply sad, mourning, afraid. There is a power behind those feelings, behind that mirror that reflects those feelings back to them. There is the power of the windows of heaven thrown wide open to experience and know directly the presence of the One. And from that to know healing and wellness this day and each day going forward. For this knowing and its manifestation in form everywhere I turn, I am so deeply grateful. I release this word now into the infinite, calling it done, and so it is.
So it is.
Well, now I get to follow that and send you back out into the world. But I'm going to make an observation. Jesse commented on David and I doing the daily readings, and David is doing the daily guides from the Signs of Mind magazine. And the interesting thing about that is every month that's a different voice. I, on the other hand, am doing Ernest Holmes, although now I'm doing Ernest Holmes and Raymond Charles Parker. And so the cool thing about reading Ernest Holmes every day is he keeps creeping into my vocabulary. So there are things that I say that I don't even realize that I say anymore that I got from Ernest Holmes. And I'm not going to cite my sources because Ernest never cites his sources. So I'm just going to tell you, in the book that I did last year, at 365 of Science of Mind, there was this line. And I'm not going to say that I've stolen it. I have co-opted it. It's mine now. And it was something that I was reminded of today. In one of those daily readings, Ernest said, "Open the windows of your soul and allow the breath of heaven to remind you you live in heaven now." Can you imagine what your life would be like if you said that to yourself every day? Open the windows of your soul. I mean, right now the weather is really nice here, and it's not going to be that way for much longer. And you know how it feels when you open the window and you get that cool breeze in? And how it just kind of shifts everything. Especially when the flowers are blooming and you get that sometimes heavy perfume that just comes in and wraps around you. And for a moment, you're transported to somewhere else. Well, you have that all the time. Because you have that window, or if you want more than one window, you're welcome to have all the windows you want in your soul. And when you open those windows, it is the breath of heaven that comes in. And the more you breathe that, the more open you are to seeing it around you, to seeing it in the people that you meet, to seeing it in the places that you go. The more you see, the more there is. The more there is, the more you see. And you can't help but bringing other people along with you. So, open the windows of your soul. Allow that breath of heaven to remind you you live in heaven now. Because there is one life, one power, one presence, one love. I'm a part of that love. It flows through me, in me, as me. And as I know this about myself, so too do I know it about each and every one of you. Heaven is right where we are. Heaven is right where you are. Heaven is all around us. Always. We expect it and we accept it. And I know this. I know this heaven. I know this expectation. I know this acceptance with all of the gratitude in my being. Because gratitude is simply another word for love. And I relax and release and know that it is so. And so it is.
So it is.
Say with me now, something wonderful is happening through me.
Something wonderful is happening.
I feel it in my body.
I feel it in my body.
I feel it in my mind.
I feel it in my mind.
I feel it in everything I
I
am.
feel it in everything I am.
I choose it.
I choose it.
I trust it.
I trust it.
I use it.
I use it.
And I love it.
I love it.
So it is.